All right. This is the week 11, week 12 online lecture for CIT 130, Object Oriented Programming with Java. We're coming up on the end of the semester, and the last two topics I want to talk about are Java applets and animation. And we're going to follow up animation with a discussion of threading. We're going to start today by reviewing quickly applets using swing components. There are a couple of things we need to understand when it comes to applets. First of all, they were designed to be run in a web browser, and therefore there are some security limitations on them. We can't access the local machine's file system, and we can't access any other computer other than the web server that the page was served from. When we design applets, we have two files. We have our compiled source code, or our .class file. We also have an HTML file that is the web page that displays the applet. When we think about applet programming, our programs are going to look a little bit different. First of all, we're not going to have a main method anymore, as you probably remember. Secondly, similar to the GUI applications we've been building, we are going to extend a class, and this time instead of a frame, we're going to extend an applet, the JApplet class, and build on that. Let's take a look at this program and break it down into the different pieces. If we look at the very beginning of the program, we have three import statements. java.awt. This allows us to use the container class, which is provided in the Abstract Window Toolkit. It's always a good idea whenever you're building any sort of graphical user interface that includes applets or windowed applications that you include this library, because it has some tools that we will want to use, such as layout managers, container class, and things like that. Since we are building this with Swing components, we do need to include the Swing library, the javax.swing library. Now again, we've been using that for quite some time in both 111 and 130. Finally, that third import statement we talked about last week a little bit, we've talked about in 111, and that is the java.awt.event library, and that gives us all of our event interfaces. When we are defining an applet class, the beginning is the same as any other class, public class, the name of the class, and instead of extending the JFrame, which we use to build GUI windowed applications, we're going to extend JApplet. That's going to give us everything that we need to be an applet and embed in a web page. We are, in this case, implementing the action listener interface so that we can handle button clicks. Again, remember that when you implement an interface, you have to implement all the methods of that interface. Thankfully, the action listener only has one. Inside the class, you'll see some global variable declarations for buttons, for a button, a label, and a counter. The reason that we might want to consider making our components, our labels, our buttons, our text areas, our drop-down boxes, and things like that, global is because if we are planning on handling events, we need the variable names for those items to be alive throughout our entire app, to exist throughout the entire source code. And so it does sometimes make sense to declare those variables globally at the top of our program. The biggest difference that we're going to see in an applet versus a standard Java application, where we would have a main method. Instead, we're now going to have an init method, and that is the initialize method. This method is called when the applet first loads in the web browser. It is a great place to do all of your setup. This is where we would like to add our components to our applet window, such as our labels and our buttons and our text boxes and all that sort of fun stuff. This is where we're going to register all of those listeners that we want. to use. Again, that is the INIT method. Now, if you read in your book about applets, there are a number of other methods that are called automatically by the operating system as your applet is run. There is a start and a stop method, I believe, as well as we'll see a little bit later a paint method and also a repaint method that is available to be overloaded. Let's take a look inside this method. The first two lines you see is a declaration of a container and then a call to get content pane. The content pane is the area in which we can add components to the window, and that is a container object that we can manipulate. We can change the background color. We can do all kinds of stuff with it. And here you see that we are changing that background color to white by calling the container's set background color method. Finally, we go ahead and change the layout manager. We talked a little bit about layout managers in the past. There are a number of layout managers that will automatically lay your controls out on your window or your, in this case, applet. We are changing from the default J applet layout manager of border layout to flow layout. We are creating our previously declared button and label methods, our button and label objects. We're adding them to the applet, and we're registering the button to handle events. The last method you'll see in our program is the action performed method. And remember, anytime you implement the action listener interface, you must have this method in your code. And basically all it's saying is that when that button is clicked, we're going to increment our count variable that we created a little earlier in the code, and we are going to set the text of the label to button clicked a number count times. That is essentially an applet. That's really all there is to it. You can create your first applet by doing exercise 1. When you click to view the next slide, if you will, in this lesson, the next topic in this lesson, what you're going to see is a video. When we're doing applets, I have found that NetBeans does not work well. In doing applets, the default configuration of the campus computers do not allow easy authoring of applets in NetBeans. It isn't that they don't permit it, it's just not easy. So we're going to be using a different free IDE, an additional free IDE that is available on all campus computers. Those of you who have had me for 111 in the past, we have, prior to this past spring, we have used it. It is called JCreator, and again, if you click to the next slide and watch the next video, I will show you where you can get JCreator, and I will show you how to get started on your first assignment.